Utah.
President, I rise today to introduce the Immigration Innovation, or I-Squared, Act of 2013. I'm pleased to be joined here by my colleagues, Senator Amy Klobuchar, Senator Marco Rubio, and Senator Chris Coons, without whom this bill wouldn't have materialized. All four of us have worked very closely together, and each one deserves total credit for this bill. Together, we've drafted one of the first bipartisan immigration bills this Congress, one that is designed to address the shortage of high-skilled labor that we face in this country. This shortage has reached a crisis level. For too long, our country has been unable to meet the ever-increasing demand for workers trained in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or STEM fields. As a result, some of our nation's top technology markets like Silicon Valley, Seattle, Boston, New York, and Salt Lake City are in desperate need for qualified STEM workers. It is critical that we not only recognize this shortage of high-skilled workers, but also understand why it exists. Increasingly, enrollment in U.S. universities in the STEM fields comes from foreign students, and despite our urgent need for workers in these fields, we continue to send these foreign students, potential high-skilled workers trained in American universities, back to their home countries after graduation. Just recently, I was in a meeting with several leaders in the technology industry where it was mentioned that between 2010 and 2020, the American economy will annually create more than 120,000 additional computer science jobs that will require at least a bachelor's degree. And that's just mentioning one aspect of this. This is great news for many of our computer science students. Unfortunately, that's the end of the good news. Each year, only about 40,000 American students receive bachelor degrees in computer science. In other words, there are approximately 80,000 new computer science positions every year in the United States that cannot be filled by available American workforce positions, I might add positions that need to be filled so that our technology industry can continue to thrive. Simply put, U.S.-based companies have a great need for those trained in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields. But at least right now, there are not enough Americans trained and ready to fill these jobs. We cannot continue to simply hope that American companies do not move operations to countries where they have greater access to individuals trained in these STEM fields. We cannot continue to ignore this problem. It's that simple. Continued inaction causes us to miss out on an important opportunity, especially since, as the American Enterprise Institute has confirmed, 100 foreign-born workers with STEM degrees create an average of 262 additional jobs for native-born workers. And let me tell you, these countries would love to have their American-educated PhDs and other highly educated individuals return and boost their economies, not only from their acquired skills, but also by creating these new jobs as well. An updated, high-skilled immigration system is directly tied to creating jobs and spurring growth across all sectors of our economy. We cannot afford any further inaction on this issue. The I-Squared Act of 2013 addresses the immediate short-term need to provide American employers with greater access to high-skilled workers, while also addressing the long-term need to invest in America's STEM education. I'm confident that this two-step approach will enable our country to thrive and help us compete in today's global economy. Now, I've mentioned my three prime co-sponsors on this bill, each one of whom deserves credit for this bill. Each one of whom has been a pleasure to work with. Each one of whom adds a great deal to getting this bill passed. And I want to personally thank them for working with me on this issue and for allowing me the privilege of working with them on this issue. And let me turn some time over to Senator Klobuchar, who, along with Senators Coons and Rubio, have been prime movers on this piece of legislation.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Hatch, and it is good to be here with our strong co-sponsors, Senator Rubio,
Minnesota.
Yes, Senator Rubio and Senator Coons, and I want to thank you for your incredible leadership. We have worked as a team, and I think this really is about what this is. It's a team, Team America, because we must be a country that makes stuff again, that invents things, that exports to the world. And to do that, we need the world's talent. That is what this bill is about. As everyone can see by looking at the four of us here on the floor, it's something that both parties can agree on. To get this done and to get comprehensive immigration reform done, we must work in a bipartisan manner. I support the comprehensive immigration principles outlined yesterday for reform and look forward to working with my colleagues on the Judiciary Committee to get this done. The I-squared bill is about encouraging engineers and inventors and innovators and entrepreneurs to work here in this country and to actually discourage companies from contracting out with people in other countries. I can't tell you how many Minnesota companies, small companies, have told me that they couldn't bring someone over because of the caps, and then they contracted with that person in another country. Well, guess what? That person then hired assistants and other people to work with them, but in one case they hired French people instead of hiring Americans. In fact, a recent study headed up by Mayor Bloomberg of New York, Mayor Castro of San Antonio, Mayor Nutter of Philadelphia, and others showed that for every H-1B visa, it creates 1.8 American jobs. Those are jobs in Hawaii, those are jobs in Minnesota. Take a look at the Fortune 500 companies. 90 of those companies were founded by immigrants, and over 200 were founded by immigrants or their children, including Medtronic and 3M in my home state. This has meant an extraordinary number of good American jobs, and we want more. We want the next pacemaker or Post-it note, which were invented in my state, to be invented again in the United States of America. I want to quickly lay out the four areas of reform that are included in the I-squared bill. First of all, we reform the H-1B visa system to meet the needs of a growing science, engineering, tech, and medical community, and to help the workers who form the backbone of those businesses. Second, we make changes to student visas to encourage students who get degrees here to stay in this country, so that we don't just say, hey, go back to India or China or some other country and start the next Google over there. We want you to start it here. Third, we improve the green card system. And finally, what is one of the most important things in this bill, we actually change the visa funding structure so that companies who bring in these high-tech and science and engineering immigrant workers will also be spending some money on funding all of the education efforts we need to do in this country for science, engineering, technology, and math, the STEM education that's going on in this country. By even a conservative estimate, that would be $300 million a year, something like $3 billion in 10 years. That's real change, and it can change the system. I'm very appreciative of the work of my colleagues, and I know Senator Rubio, who has shown great leadership on this issue, is next going to talk about the H-1B and student visa reforms. And again, I want to thank him, Senator Hatch, Senator Coons, for their leadership on this issue. We are very excited about moving ahead with this bill.
Thank you, Senator. I'm just trying to get my microphone fixed here. It's the first time I speak from this desk. This is my new desk here.
Senator from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple things. There's been a lot in the news over the last 24 hours about immigration as an issue that confronts our country. And I wanted to put this in the context of that and then talk specifically about the details that are within this. First of all, in the context of immigration reform, there are things that I think the vast majority of Americans would agree. And one of them is this, that we have a legal immigration system which is not working for the country. And I think despite the debate that exists about illegal immigration and how to deal with that reality, and that's a real debate that needs to happen, one of the things everyone agrees on is that legal immigration is good for this country. It's been an important part of our history. It's a critical part of our future. And that the legal immigration system that we have in place right now does not work for America. And it really does not work for the 21st century. Now, let me be clear about one thing. I support family-based immigration. That's how my parents came to this country. And I don't want us to do anything that undermines it. But I also know that in the 21st century, we can no longer afford to have an immigration system where literally only less than 10% of the people who come here do so based on the skills that they bring to this country. Now think about this for a moment. If I said to you that the United States of America, that the NBA should be a collection of the best basketball players in the world, who would disagree with that? If I said that Major League Baseball should be a collection of the best baseball players in the world, who would disagree with that? Well, how then can we disagree about that when it comes to our economy? That the smartest, hardest working, most talented people on this planet, we should want them to come here. I, for one, have no fear that our country is going to be overrun by PhDs. I, for one, have no fear that this country is going to be overrun by nuclear physicists and inventors and entrepreneurs. Now, we have to create a system where that can happen in a rational, organized, and legal way. And that's what we're attempting to do here, because that is not what we have right now in the United States. What we have, in fact, is a system, and Senator Hatch has discussed it. It's really startling when I heard this. The nation has a demand yearly for 120,000 computer science engineers. But our universities only produce 40,000 people a year. Now, this is an indictment of our educational system. We need to fix that. We need to get to a point in this country where we have 120,000 people graduating to meet the demand. But in the short term, right now, we've got to deal with the fact that if those 80,000 jobs, if those 80,000 graduates are not created here, those jobs are still going to exist. They're just not going to exist here. These companies aren't going to wait for us to produce more graduates. These companies aren't going to wait for us to fix our immigration system. They've got a business to run. And if they can't find the people they need to fill these jobs, they'll just send those jobs to another country. Let me tell you what that means in practical terms. That means that these high-paying jobs in these industries will be paying the taxes in some other country. We'll be stimulating the economy in some other country. We'll be laying down roots in some other nation. You want to know why America's special? One of the reasons why it's special? Because for over 200 years, we have been a collection of the world's best and brightest, a magnet that attracts people here. And now we have an immigration system that in the 21st century is making that very difficult to achieve. And that's what this effort does. The other concern I've heard is, well, what about the folks that are in this country now? And this is a legitimate concern. When people raise that, I don't get upset about that. That is a very legitimate concern. About the kids that are born here and raised here that go into these industries, will they be hurt? Well, number one, as you've seen, the need far exceeds what we're producing. So that's not an immediate concern. But here's the other, and that is the startling figure that was used earlier, that for every 100 foreign-born STEM workers, we're creating 260 some odd jobs. It's indisputable that these jobs create jobs for people right down the line in this process. If you're an entrepreneur that's an immigrant, you create jobs for all kinds of people, most of whom are born here. If you create some new technology or develop some new technology, you create jobs and opportunity for people that live here, work here, were born here. This is a net positive for our economy. And that's why this issue is so critical that it be confronted. And by the way, as we talk about needing to deal with our entire immigration system, we can't modernize America's legal immigration system if we don't have a way to get the world's best and brightest to come here in a way that's expedient, in a way that's cost-effective, in a way that's safe, and in a way that's legal. And that's what we're attempting to do. This bill is not in competition with any other effort. It complements it. In fact, it's an indispensable part of it. You cannot comprehensively reform America's legal immigration system if it does not include visa provisions for graduates in science, technology, engineering, and math. My final point. It makes no sense to invite people to come to the United States, to study at our universities, to become the best and brightest in the world at the subject matter, and then to ask them to leave. Think about that for a moment. We tell you, come up to America. We're going to let you go to our best schools. We're going to teach you everything we know. And then we want you to go somewhere else and use the knowledge that you gained here. That's crazy. That's not just nonsensical. It is crazy. We can't keep doing that. And hopefully we'll begin to change it here now. It's been a pleasure to work with all the folks involved in this effort. Senator Hatch's leadership has been extraordinary. Senator Klobuchar as well. We have a really good group working here. And our final colleague who's been a part of this, an indispensable one, we worked on this issue in the context of another piece of legislation, which we're hoping will get moving soon, Startup 2.0, which is an issue for another day, is Senator Coons, my colleague from Delaware, and we're obviously interested in hearing from him about this issue as well.
Thank you, Senator Rubio. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to work with you on this legislation and in the last Congress on the more than 3 bills that we co-sponsored that were focused on how to create jobs and how to drive our economy forward. To Senator Hatch, I'm grateful for your leadership, and Senator Klobuchar for your companionship as we serve together on the Judiciary Committee and as the four of us introduce today this bill of which we are so proud, the Immigration Innovation Act of 2013. Mr. President, for decades, the United States enjoyed the commanding advantage of being home to all the world's top universities, particularly in science and technology, engineering and math, in the so-called STEM fields. And we were the best place for the graduates of those universities and their advanced science programs to stay and launch a new business. But today, that field has changed, and our competitors are vying to provide more supportive environments for innovators, inventions, and startup companies. There has been a sea change in the field of opportunity back home for those foreign nationals who in increasing numbers are educated in the United States and whom we then force to return to the nation of origin. So even though many of the most talented young people from around the globe still pour into the United States to obtain their master's or doctoral degrees in STEM, now more than ever, they're not just tempted to take their education home with them and start businesses elsewhere. They are attracted by their home countries and forced by our outdated immigration system. What an unwise way to compete in the global economy. Our outdated immigration system hasn't adapted to the modern world. Half of all master's and doctoral degrees in STEM fields at American universities are today earned by foreign-born students who then face an uncertain, expensive, and unwieldy path to pursuing their dreams in the United States. Our country is hemorrhaging innovations and the inventors who make them and the jobs that come with them, because America's immigration laws have failed to keep up with the demands of the modern age. We cannot afford to keep educating the world's brightest students at our leading universities, which I'll remind you are subsidized by U.S. tax dollars and American charitable giving, and then telling them they cannot repay those investments by contributing to the U.S. workforce. It's both bad policy and bad business. That's why I've been working on this issue since I arrived in the Senate, introducing 3 bills and calling for the creation of a new class of green cards for immigrants who've earned an advanced STEM degree from an American university. I was especially glad to see that the bipartisan framework released yesterday by Senators McCain, Schumer, Rubio, and others, which moves us towards comprehensive immigration reform, embraces this vital core premise. I also welcome President Obama's contributions to this discussion and look forward to hearing what he has to say today in Las Vegas. There is indeed broad bipartisan agreement that it's long past time to reform our immigration system to make room for foreign-born, American-educated experts who want to apply their skills, start businesses, and raise their families here. At the same time, we have to dramatically improve STEM education available to American citizens to fill this dramatic gap in these fields. As Senator Hatch said just a few minutes ago, if you take the example of computer science, by 2020, the U.S. economy will need 120,000 men and women to fill these jobs, yet just 40,000 graduates with degrees in computer science will be Americans. How to fill that gap? So the bipartisan legislation we introduced today tackles both sides of this problem by reforming our outdated immigration system to allow highly skilled engineers and researchers to stay here rather than leaving and taking their jobs and future opportunities with them, and by funneling the hundreds of millions of dollars of fees these experts pay for their green cards back into improving U.S.-based STEM education. It's a win-win. The Immigration Innovation Act of 2013 will open the door, will recapture unused green cards, and will move away from the outdated model of country caps and overall caps to better compete with countries like our neighbors to the north in Canada, where these caps don't exist. And Microsoft is eager to open a new massive development facility at our expense and loss. One of the most important parts of this legislation, as I mentioned, is that we're using fees from these newly expanded H-1B visas and green cards to fund state initiatives on STEM. This will keep America at the cutting edge of science and technology and fuel economic growth for this country and generations to come. While each of the co-authors of this legislation have made substantial contributions, I'm especially grateful to Senator Hatch of Utah for his leadership. Senator Hatch, would you tell us a little bit more about this legislation? Well,
thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Utah.
I want to thank you, Senator Coons and Senator Klobuchar and Senator Rubio. As you can see, it's a real pleasure to work with these three partners and others as well that we'll name here before we're through here today. And I particularly want to thank each of you for the helpful overview that you've given on this bill. It's been a real pleasure for me to work with you three very innovative leaders in the Senate. But as a number of you have mentioned, by eliminating per-country limits for employment-based green cards, recapturing lost employment-based immigrant visas, exempting certain classes of immigrants from the annual green card limit, and creating a new and sustainable funding stream to enhance the U.S. STEM education pipeline, we will help America's innovative industries recruit and retain high-skilled talent to more effectively compete in today's global marketplace, and it will make us more competitive. We have heard from many industry stakeholders that support the I-Squared Act of 2013. To date, we have received letters of support from the following. These are supporters of this bill: Microsoft, Oracle, Intel, IBM, Hewlett-Packard Company, Facebook, Texas Instruments, Qualcomm, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the National Association of Manufacturers, BSA, the Software Alliance, Compete America, the Semiconductor Industry Association, TechNet, the Technology Association of America, the Consumer Electronics Association, the Software and Information Industry Association, the Internet Association, the Computer and Communications Industry Association, the Information Technology Industry Council, the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation, TechServe Alliance, the Association for Competitive Technology, the Telecommunications Industry Association, CTIA, the Wireless Association, Sabre Holdings, the Council of Chief State School Officers, and just to mention one other, Immigration Voice. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that these letters from each of these companies and organizations be inserted into the congressional record at this point.
Without objection, so ordered.
Working with Senators Klobuchar, Rubio, and Coons, I have to say it's a real privilege for me. These are really three very fine additions to the United States Senate. And in the case of Senator Klobuchar and Senator Coons, they're two respected members on the Senate Judiciary Committee, and Senator Rubio, who in my view is one of the most knowledgeable senators we have on immigration policy, and as you can see, a terrific leader in so many other ways, we send a strong message that both sides of the aisle can come together to craft bipartisan legislation to address one of our country's most urgent economic needs. Yesterday, 8 of our colleagues unveiled a framework to overhaul our nation's immigration system. I'm proud of them. I commend them for their willingness to work in a bipartisan way to reform our immigration laws. It's very much needed. And one of the leaders is, of course, our own Senator Rubio, as well as Senator Schumer and Senator McCain, and others as well that I hate to not mention, but I think you get the point. Similarly, the work that Senators Klobuchar, Rubio, Coons, and I have done in crafting the I-Squared Act of 2013 was no easy task and represents hours of negotiations with interested stakeholders and has garnered, as you can see, widespread industry support. The I-Squared Act makes sense. I hope that our language to reform the high-skilled immigration system is considered by this body in the immediate future. I would surely like to hear a little bit more from Senator Klobuchar, if she'd care to make some additional points on this.
Well,
I don't mean to take all the time.
Mr. President.
Senator from Minnesota.
Thank you for those kind words, Senator Hatch. And I wanted to actually follow up about some Senator Rubio's analogy on the teams and the sports, because I did note he mentioned basketball and baseball, but not hockey. And as you know, Minnesota is the state of hockey. In fact, we just are very happy that the NHL is back playing again and that our team, the Wild, is playing. And I actually looked at some of the numbers, similar to what Senator Rubio was talking about, and in fact, a significant number of our players on our professional hockey team come from other countries. As you know, there's a lot of Canadian hockey players, and there are players from all over the world in all of these sports. And you wonder, well, why is that? With all the talk about immigration backlogs and the visa shortages, you wonder how all these great athletes are contributing to our teams. Well, the answer is that there is no cap on visas for athletes. Again, there is no limit on how many athletes can come over and play on our sports team. As a result, athletes from across the globe can compete here, and we have the best sports leagues in the world. Why shouldn't we apply the same principles to engineering, to innovation, to science, to medical development? That's what we should be doing. In this bill, we do have some caps, but we are raising those caps because we think it is time to compete with the rest of the world. Immigrants have always played a crucial role in these disciplines in the U.S. In fact, and this was an interesting statistic we got, the U.S. Nobel Prize winners, 30% of them, Senator Hatch, have been immigrants, 30% of them. One of those was Mario Capecci. He was born in Italy in 1937. His mother survived a Nazi concentration camp and was eventually able to bring him to the U.S. in 2007. He won the Nobel Prize in Medicine for his work on altering genes in mice through the use of stem cells. Obviously, this is an exciting area of work that gives us great hope to solve many diseases. Medtronic, a Minnesota institution that has pioneered medical devices for years, started in a garage, started by the child of an immigrant. So why would we want to prevent the next person who would come in who could cure cancer, who would create a new energy source, who would bring a new means of communication to our country? This bill is about moving our country forward. This bill is about competing in the world economy. And if we can do it in baseball and basketball, and I would add, Senator Rubio, hockey, we can do it in engineering, science, technology, and math. And so I thank my colleagues and turn it over to Senator Rubio.
President.
Senator from Florida.
Thank you. And just to let the record reflect that I did not mean to offend hockey fans. On the contrary, we have two hockey teams.
Senator Rubio.
The Florida Panthers and the Lightning in the Tampa Bay area, who actually have won the Stanley Cup before, and in Florida, the Panthers in the playoffs last year. So we like hockey too, although you can't play it outdoors in Florida. But in any event, I think the point is well taken, that we do want the best and brightest. And the one point I want to make is just the one thing I've picked up on in the immigration issue in general over the last 24 to 48 hours is how important it is that accurate information reach the American people about what it is we're working on and what it is we're not working on. And immigration is a complicated thing. You know, I hear a lot of discussion about immigration. I'll have more to say about it later today, but immigration is a complicated process. The one we have now is complicated. It's important for people to understand what it is we're trying to do and what it is not. And I think that's true for the entire issue of immigration, but particularly important for this one. And to that end, I guess I want to issue a public challenge to the companies who in the past have gotten engaged in the public discourse and in the public debate on issues that involve the issues of technology. Just a few months ago, and it's a sore spot in some places, I imagine, but we had this issue we call SOPA and PIPA and all these other things that were going to impact the freedom of the internet and the freedom of communicating online. And a lot of groups got involved to speak about that and to try to clear the record about what they were for and what they were against. And I hope they'll do the same thing on this. I hope that they'll use the platforms on this to openly discuss what this is about. So I guess this is a challenge to the Facebooks and the Googles and the Twitters of the world. Get engaged in letting people know what's at stake here. That if you like these innovations, which have radically changed the way we live in this country. I mean, just think about this for a moment. If a decade ago you would tell someone that you were going to Google them, they would be offended because they didn't know what that didn't mean anything a decade ago. Now it means something. You know, if you were to say a decade ago that you were going to tweet something, people would look at you funny. Now it actually means something. These are innovations that happened in America that have not only changed the way we live and made our lives more interesting and in some ways more productive, but are really transforming the world. You think about the political movements here and around the world. There was a time when you couldn't even engage in public discourse in America if you didn't have an organization to back you. Now any single individual can become the leader of a movement fairly quickly by using the platform that have been created by innovators. The disproportionate number of the people that develop this stuff are immigrants, or the children of immigrants, or children or people that we've trained in this country that, thank God, we didn't send back home. We have a chance to do that, and I hope that those that have a vested interest in this issue passing will use the platforms that they own and operate to clearly inform the American people about what's at stake here on the issue of immigration as a whole, but in particular on this issue of high-skilled immigration. And I guess for some additional thoughts, I want to turn it over to Senator Coons, who has a unique insight into innovation, and we worked on the Startup 2.0. I'm going to plug it again because it's an important piece of legislation that we'd like to get done fairly soon. A lot of it based on investor visas and things of that nature, and I think Senator Coons has more to add about our efforts here today.
Thank you, Senator Rubio, and I've been grateful.
Senator Coons, would the senator yield just for a moment for a compliment?
Certainly, I yield to the senator from Florida.
I just want to compliment my colleague from Florida. As I gave a number of interviews yesterday on his initiatives with regard to comprehensive immigration, not to speak of the issue at hand, more about the specialized necessity of visas, but in overall comprehensive immigration, which I certainly favor and have voted for in the past. And a huge step was taken because of the initiative of a number of courageous senators, among whom I would include my colleague from Florida. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Nelson. If I might, Mr. President.
Senator from Delaware.
I join the senator of Florida in thanking and recognizing the junior senator from Florida, Senator Rubio, for his great work on the issues of job creation and innovation through Startup 2.0 and other bills we've worked on together, but also through the comprehensive framework that was released yesterday. The framework released by Senator Schumer and McCain, Senators Rubio and others, takes the right approach to ensuring that the United States has a modern, efficient, effective, and compassionate immigration system. I was glad to see it addresses family-based immigration challenges, including creating an expedited path to citizenship for young people brought here as children through no fault of their own, people we rightly call dreamers. While the Immigration Innovation Act we are introducing today recognizes the critical contributions that immigrants have made and will continue to make in highly technical fields, we also must recognize the essential contributions that immigrants make along the entire labor spectrum across the whole breadth of this country, to building this country up in the past and to giving it a brighter future. As you heard from Senator Klobuchar before, if Team USA is to play competitively globally, we need the best and brightest contributors to our future. Why would we educate the best inventors and innovators in the world and send many of them back to compete with us from other countries, rather than embracing them here and allowing them to invent, to invest, and create companies and jobs here in the United States? While I am eager to move ahead on family-focused reform, I am equally eager to have us move ahead with reform for STEM degree holders. Comprehensive immigration reform is a necessity for the hardworking people of Delaware and around the country, for those who want nothing more than to play by the rules, build a better life for their children, and contribute to the American dream. That is, Mr. President, what any of us would want. The chance to work hard, to see our children grow up happy and healthy with the education and opportunities that make their dreams come true, and to contribute to a stronger America. That's why I'm committed to a comprehensive overhaul of our immigration system, one that supports children and families, as well as our economy and our vital technology sector, and that welcomes immigrants into the rich fabric of this country, as the United States has done since our founding. As someone who trained in chemistry, as someone who worked for a high-technology materials-based science company, as someone who met just yesterday with a Delaware company complaining of the challenges that visa caps and limits place on their ability to do research and development and to compete in the global economy, I just want to say I am grateful for the leadership Senator Hatch and Senator Klobuchar and Senator Rubio have shown in crafting this piece, this vital piece, of the total picture of comprehensive immigration reform. Thank you. And Senator Hatch, do you have some closing comments as we conclude this
President?
Senator from Utah.
Mr. President, I want to particularly thank my colleagues, Senator Coons, Senator Rubio, and Senator Klobuchar for their work on this bill. It's obvious from their statements here today that they have a great deal of commitment to these important issues. I-squared is a common sense approach to ensuring that those who have come here to be educated in our American universities have the ability to stay here with their families and contribute to our economy and to our society. This bill is good for workers, it's good for businesses trying to grow, and it's good for our economy. Now, I'm pleased with the momentum we already have seen on this bill through industry support and within the Senate itself. I'm pleased to announce that Senators Flake, Shaheen, Heller, Blumenthal, Hoeven, Senator Nelson from Florida, and Warner have agreed to be original co-sponsors of the I-Squared Act. And I encourage many more of my colleagues to support and help pass this bill. It's long overdue. It's well thought out. We've run it by the top people in this country. And frankly, it has a lot of support so far, and we haven't even gone out and tried to get co-sponsors, and they're starting to come just naturally. And I hope that we can get the Senate to call this bill up. And of course, I think we're all interested in going beyond this bill too and doing true immigration reform that will help our country to continue to maintain itself as